time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Janelle Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. For those of you who are too inspired to retire, I love that you joined us, and today we have a really fascinating conversation, especially for any of you who have gone through challenges with your children, loved ones, or family members, because I have the lovely, gracious Janelle Martin here with me today, and we're going to be talking about discovering purpose through pain, which is one way to do it and tends to be the way many of us do it. So welcome, Janelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Clearly you're a butterfly fan. I can see that in your background. So is there a theme or a behind that, or what's the story behind the butterflies?
I've always loved butterflies, but they really became meaningful to me through going through addiction with my daughter as a teenager and recovery. So the butterfly obviously symbolizes transformation. And through that process, I believe maybe my whole life I've been sort of slowly going through that transformation, but it really sped up and became very pronounced during the experience with her. And the painting, this is a painting that she made after she got sober for the second time, and it's just kind of been a brand for our journey, and that's what our book is about: is going from really ugly to beautiful.
Right. We'll talk more about that. A lot of people don't know that when the caterpillar goes in the chrysalis, it doesn't just transform it. It dissolves into goo. It completely dissipates into nothingness, except for this primordial goo, which then reforms as a butterfly. And that's often part of the transformational process is not being who we've been before, and often in that stage, before we become who we're becoming, that stage in the middle can be quite challenging in the cocoon. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, everybody, the official intro so that you know who Janelle is, and then we'll find out the juicy tidbits behind the scene about her, the real, deep, dark secrets. Then we're going to launch into talking about this conversation of how to walk through difficult situations like drug addictions or addictions in general with people in your family, and how it can become a transformational journey. And certainly dive into your story more, Janelle, but also really how does that help and support people in going through the difficult times that you're going through right now? It may not be exactly this, but pain is pain is pain, and the transformational journey is very similar. So we will have some tips for you here. So Dr. Janelle Martin owns a holistic mental health practice in Houston, Texas, called the Mind Connection, utilizing natural approaches to brain health and healing. She's a licensed counselor, certified microcurrent neurofeedback provider. You try and say that 5 times real fast.
I know, it's a mouthful.
Doctor of functional medicine and Dr. Amen certified brain health professional. Okay. Mm-hmm. She is also a published author of 2 books, Rising Above, Stories of Overcoming and Losing Her, and the second book is Losing Her, Finding Us, A Mother's Fight, A Daughter's Journey, and The Road to Recovery, which we're going to give you some goodies later that include that or part of that. So stick around. All right. So that's the official bio. Tell us something about you people would never guess, and maybe even your friends don't know. And secrets are welcome, Well,
my family background is very, unique. I was born in the 70s, early 70s. And I was born to a very blended family, which I thought was normal growing up. But I realize now back then that wasn't normal at all. So there are 7 of us siblings. And I know, and it's kind of like hers, his, and ours kind of thing. And so there was always siblings in and out of the house. Some of us lived there full time, but we were always a very loving and connected family. But it's funny how you grow up in that and think that that's the way everybody lives and that's everybody's family. And then you realize that was really unique. It's more common now, but not back then.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Interesting. And by the way, Yours, Mine, and Ours is one of my favorite movies of all time. The remake isn't quite as good as the original Lucille Ball, Henry Fonda, I think, version, but it's a really fun movie. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your journey, how not just the journey with your daughter, but tell us what your why is. Why do you do what you do?
I've always loved people. So originally, when I was going to college to begin with, out of high school, I wanted to be a counselor. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I wanted to help people. And I didn't end up doing that back then because medical school was very expensive and took a lot of time. And I ended up getting married and having children and all of that. So it got delayed, but I believe that it was delayed for a reason, because on this side of it, being a counselor and doing what I do with the mental health profession, I think all of my life experience between then and now makes me so much better than I would have been back then.
Yes.
And loving and helping people. So I do think it's been my mission, and I think it's what I'm here for. I just don't think I was quite ready for it back when I had the first idea of it.
Right. No, that makes sense. And, our life is what it is. So it's always the perfect time right now.
Yes.
So, because it's the only time is right now. So, so you are okay, we're going to go through a couple of the things. So, the licensed counselor, certified microcurrent neurofeedback provider. So what does that mean? What does that do?
That's the first thing that I trained in 6 years ago. It's really a technology that helps the brain to heal itself. Mm-hmm. So we can elicit a little bit of energy into the brain, and that's why it's called a microcurrent, because it's teeny, teeny, tiny. The brain can perceive it, and it helps the brain to rebalance and function optimally. And when your brain is functioning well, then a lot of the mental health, even physical and emotional conditions that we deal with are alleviated, or they're a lot better. And we have just seen miracles happen with this technology. It's completely painless. It's safe for everyone. And it's the crux of what we do. We utilize everything we do.
So what are the kinds of things that it can help with or remedy?
Yeah, so
these are issues.
Anxiety. The big ones are anxiety, depression, addiction. It helps with that. It helps with physical ailments like headaches and migraines. It can help with autism, PTSD, insomnia. I never knew so many people didn't sleep until I started doing this. And sleep is so important because that's the only time that your brain actually heals and flushes out toxins and waste. So it helps with almost anything: fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, stroke, traumatic brain injury, concussions. Yeah, long list.
And so if people don't live in Texas, can they look up microcurrent neurofeedback providers in their area?
Yes, they can. Mm-hmm.
All right. So if you're looking for something different to try that might support and alleviate some of those issues, Janelle has had some amazing results with it with her clients and is a big proponent of it. We were talking about it before, and she can't say enough good stuff about it. All right, let's talk about Dr. Amen, certified brain health professional. What does that mean?
Yeah, Dr. Amen is the brain expert of the world. So if you haven't heard of Dr. Daniel Amen, look him up because he will blow your mind, literally. But he does brain scans. So he does SPECT scans of the brain, and he's done probably hundreds of thousands of brain scans. So he's come up with ways of assessing the brain without having to scan it. Of course, you can go get a scan, but pretty expensive. But so we trained under him and to be certified, and we get to use his brain health assessments to be able to recommend nutraceuticals for our clients to help their brain function a little better. And those people that usually want something like that could be experiencing depression, a lot of ADD type things, and then anxiety. Those are our big major three that we would typically do those assessments on. And he has a host of brain formulated nutraceuticals that are really helpful for so many people, and they have less side effects and toxicity than pharmaceuticals. So
well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about brain health, because you mentioned a bunch of times, and I'm kind of thinking, like I get that, for instance, our liver can get unhealthy and different other organs, but I never actually thought of my brain as being anything other than sitting there doing what it's supposed to do. And I never really thought about brain health. So tell me a little bit more about what that actually means. How can your brain be unhealthy? Isn't it hanging out in your head?
Well, I mean, first of all, injury. I mean, and that is more common than people think. Hitting soccer balls on your head, that's causing brain injury. It doesn't seem like it would, but it does, because your skull is very, very hard and rigid, and it has very sharp edges inside of it, ridges, and your brain is the consistency of soft butter. So anytime your brain is being jostled in your skull, you're causing some damage. And then, car accidents, falling on your head, playing football, of course, we've seen what that does with players as they get older. And so it is very common to have brain injury. And you don't have to lose consciousness. It just doesn't have to be dramatic to actually have an injury. So that's a big one. And then the other thing is taking in toxic substances, so pharmaceuticals and drugs and alcohol and anything that's not healthy for our bodies affects the way our brain functions too. And, and sometimes the air is not super clean, and we just have all kinds of things going on in our world that not only affect our body, but affect our brain. And how that manifests usually is something like pathways just being closed off or not working properly. And so, there's a myth out there that we only use 5% of our brain or 10% of our brain. And that's not true. We use our entire brain, but our brain is very resilient as well. So when we have damaged parts, usually there are other parts that can take up the slack, but it doesn't really function optimally. So sometimes it's hard to remember things, or we don't feel, our mood isn't quite right, or we're not sleeping well. It'll manifest in some way, but of course you're still walking around functional. Right. So it's super important.
So why does that myth exist? Because I've heard that lots.
I did too.
Because is it simply that there's different parts of our brain that fire at different times, and so we're only using that little piece at that time? Is that what they might be talking about?
Maybe so, or maybe they just think that, I think there's a lot that we don't know about the brain. It is so complex. And so maybe back in the day, it was a thing where they think, only a part of it was really where the action is happening and the rest of it isn't, but it's not true.
Okay, well, there you go. See, now I learned something brand new, because I did not know that wasn't the truth. Okay, and one last thing. Tell us, because people might be curious about this because I am, what is the difference between a doctor of functional medicine and a medical doctor?
So doctor of functional medicine is looking at the root cause of disease or illness. So we're looking at the way that the processes of the body function to find out the root of what's happening. So usually when you go to a medical doctor, they listen to what you say is going on with you, and you tell them, I'm having whatever symptoms you're having, and they find a pill or something and they give it to you and kind of send you on your way. They don't typically try to find out what's really happening in your body. They just, and a lot of people want this, so I can't fault the doctors always. We kind of are that society. We want just that magic pill to make the pain go away. And we don't take the time to figure out why the pain is actually there. Right. So functional medicine gets to the root of the problem. Okay.
So it's more focused on the cause than dealing with the effect. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about you and your journey in terms of your daughter and so forth. And then later we'll talk about you and your entrepreneurial journey. But just talk me through a little bit about what has the journey been. So when did it all start? And because you've written, well, a couple of books about it, but written your most recent book about losing her and finding us. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so it started back in 2003. So it's been over 20 years when I divorced my kid's father.
Mm-hmm.
They were, my daughter has an older brother. They're 2 years apart. And they were 5 and 3 when we separated and I left. It had become an abusive situation, not with the kids, but with me. So we split. And at that point, my ex-husband, maybe not right away, but by the time I got remarried, so that would have been about 5 years later, I got remarried. And at that time, it really ramped up. My ex-husband decided that he wanted to ruin my life and didn't want his children to have a relationship with a new man. And not only did my ex-husband move out of state, but then he made it his mission to try to destroy my life. So the way he did that was through our children. So it started pretty heavy then. And my son, unfortunately, really wanted the love and affection and his dad's approval. So he really bought into a lot of the stuff that was going on. And my daughter really didn't buy in, and she just kind of felt torn in half. For the good amount of her formative years of just not really understanding or knowing who to believe or what was the truth and why these things were happening. And there was a custody battle. I guess I wouldn't call it a battle, but he did sue me for custody of the kids when my son was 15 and so my daughter would have been 13. So she was in 8th grade. And she was well aware that the point of that was not for her. He didn't want her. He wanted her brother. And she knew it. And it was devastating for her. And the court, and of course, that was terrifying. Leaving your kids in the hands of the courts is never a fun feeling. But they ended up staying in Texas with me. And but then I think things got worse. So then it became her fault that they didn't get their way. And not only was her dad angry with her, but her brother turned on her. And so for the next few years, she endured just being the outcast, the one who foiled their plans and didn't go along with them. And she was the enemy. And it profoundly affected her. And I knew some of it. I mean, clearly I lived in the same house with them and I saw what was going on, but our house had been filled with tension for years. So I felt in the middle of everyone. I wanted everyone happy, and my ex or my current husband was being vilified, and I knew he didn't deserve that. And I'm trying to keep the peace everywhere. I was like killing myself, just trying to get through each day and keep everyone as happy as possible. And I don't know that anybody was ever super happy, but when my son graduated high school, he cut off all contact with me and went to live with his dad. So it's been 9 years. We've had a couple of instances of communication since then, but for the last 5, he emailed me last summer to tell me he loved me, which was totally out of the blue, but there has been no real communication since then. So maybe the door's open there. I don't know. But with my daughter, she ended up going down a really tough road. Not only was she abused by her brother and her dad during those last few years, but when her brother left, it devastated her even more because they had been best friends prior to that, their whole existence. And so now she had felt like she'd lost him completely. And anyway, she turned to drugs to cope with all of those emotions and that distress. And she didn't want to live. And I did not know, and it's so hard to admit this as a parent, that I did not understand the depth of her pain at the time. I really didn't know. She was an athlete. She was still getting decent grades, and she always put on a smile for us. She hid it well, I think. And I don't know if there were signs I should have paid attention to, and I discuss a lot of that in the book, but But she quickly went downhill. She quickly became addicted to drugs, and I had to kick her out of the house during her senior year. And I sent her to live with her dad, which was a really, really hard decision to make.
Yeah,
But
no. Well, so let's talk a little bit about some of the pieces of that. And so those of you who are listening to this, if your situation is not exactly the same, you can probably relate to being caught in the middle in a tension or a fight or a disagreement. You can probably relate to the not really knowing what's kind of going on with people, even people close to you at times, and being surprised by where it went. And it's easy for us to blame ourselves and to say, well, I should have known, I should have seen it, I should have done more, I should have been aware, etc. So I'm sure you went through that process for you. So how did you, what was that process for you in terms of the self-recrimination, and how did you get through that? How did you heal that for you? We'll talk about your daughter in a minute.
yeah, that was difficult. Things happened so quickly with her that it took me a while to catch up, just to be able to sort of realize what was happening. And so when I kicked her out, this happened very quickly. And then she ended up literally 3 months later, she was in rehab. And a whole lot of events happened in that 3 months that she was with her dad. And I did not catch up to it until that crisis point, until we had to find some place to put her. I ended up having to find some place to put her because I couldn't bring her home. And getting into a treatment program and really diving into a parent program, that's when I broke. Like there was so much to look back at and figure out, how did we get here? What in the world is this? I don't know anything about addiction. I didn't know anything about treatment. I didn't know anything about recovery. I didn't know what the 12 steps were. I knew nothing. And so I just laid it bare. What do I need to do? What do I need? I need to process how we got here, but I also need to know what to do because she's clearly in crisis and I'm in crisis because my daughter's in crisis.
Right.
And so getting through that was literally going to those parent meetings every week and just learning and eventually learning how to forgive myself for the things that I just didn't know and I couldn't have known. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And that doesn't excuse me. I wasn't perfect, doesn't excuse it, but I have worked really hard at looking at myself and changing myself and the way that I view things and the way that I relate to her and to everyone around me. And I think my entire thought process has changed. And I got a sponsor and I went through the 12 steps, and that does help you through that whole process of self-reflection and really looking at your shortcomings and then turning it over to God. And there's just a lot in there. I've done a lot of work, a lot.
Well, I can hear the work, and it sounds like, especially at that point, you were really in a coping, thinking through, being very much in dealing with your head and so forth, because you had to cope and react. But when it later, because often it's not until the crisis passes or shifts enough that the situation is safe that we then can sometimes go into and experience the guilt, the shame, the fear, the anger, all of those feelings. And so you mentioned the forgiveness, but in between, there was all of that other stuff. So what were the things that got you through? Because in case there's people listening right now that are in the midst of that guilt and shame and I could have, and I should have, and all of that self-recrimination, what got you through that?
I prayed a lot. My faith was a huge part of getting through that. But what I also did was when certain things came back to me that I really felt bad about, and it made me feel like, why didn't I see this? I took them to my daughter. At that point, we had rebuilt a foundation for a relationship between us, and we had so many heart-to-hearts, and I cried to her a lot about, I remember this happening now, and I didn't know what it meant then, and I'm so so sorry that I wish I would have known. Should I have known? And she helped me forgive myself because she never held anything against me, and she made it easier for me. But I was real with her, like really real with her, and I think that helped a lot. Helped.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And getting real with people rather than in our head about what we think the judgments are in the situation, getting, I call it on the court, in the game with the person rather than doing the relationship up here. And that takes courage. That takes courage to say, I'm sorry I screwed up, and ow, and what was the impact of that, and to be willing to hear it and stay with that. So what was going on? Just a brief version of what was going on that precipitated you having her leave the house. So why did you decide? Because that's a big decision for a lot of people, and especially with addictions, there is a turning point for some people where they go, okay, this is not functional in my life, in my relationship, in my marriage, or whatever it is, and they have to make this really hard choice. And it can be terrifying because it may mean literally the death of the person you love. I've gone through addictions with my mom. Well, pretty much almost everybody in my family, but especially my mom. I've got one of my best friends also wrote a book on her journey with her daughter with addictions, and you basically you put on your own oxygen mask, literally in the real world, not notionally, and it can be one of the hardest things because you don't know if that other person is going to get their mask on.
100%.
How what precipitated that, and how did you deal with it? What made you decide to put your oxygen mask on first?
I'm going to say I'm not really sure, but I will tell you the steps that we got there. So in the summer between her junior and senior year, it was the 4th of July weekend, and we were at a friend's house, and a friend of my daughter's, they weren't like close friends at the time, but our family had known her for a long time, but she sent me a message through Facebook and a picture of my daughter using drugs. And I really did not know anything was going on, but there is nothing that hits you in the face harder than seeing a photo of this happening. And so I was made aware of what was going on. And this girl was very concerned about my daughter because she had watched her for, I guess, a period of time go from, dabbling to full-fledged drug use, and she was concerned enough to reach out to me, which I'm forever grateful, because I feel like that's probably what started the life-saving measures that we did. So of course I confronted her, and she lied, and all the things. She was going to quit drugs, and she didn't, and we got her a dog and thought we fixed it all because we didn't know what we were doing, but all the things. But I did lay down the rules then, like, there will be no drug use in my home. I will not have it, and you will not live here if that's what you choose to do. So of course she said no, whatever. So I believed her, but within 6 months, by that Christmas, I had a lot of suspicions, never caught her until right after Christmas. We had another incident. She said she was somewhere she wasn't, and just, by the grace of God, I caught her. And that was it for me. I was done. I guess I have pretty good boundaries. She was in the middle of her senior year. She was only 17, but when I caught her this time and asked her if she'd pass a drug test, she said no. She was very honest, but she was also like completely no emotion whatsoever, like just on. It was weird, and so it wasn't a long conversation, but I said, would you pass a drug test? She said no. I said, you can't live here. If you're going to use drugs, you need to stop. And she said, I'm not going to. And I said, okay, well, then you can't live here. And It was just a very spur of the moment thing. We called her dad in that moment. I put the phone down on her bed. She had actually a flight just within a couple of days of that incident to go visit him. And I just, in my head, I was like, this is it. So we called him and I said, when she gets on the plane, she's not coming home. This is what's going on. And didn't even give him a chance really to say, okay. He kind of stuttered and stammered and was like, very confused, but he didn't say no. And that's what happened. So she went, and it was after that I freaked out. What the hell did I just do?
Mm-hmm.
What did I just do? I just sent this, my daughter to what I would consider, the devil. Yeah. And I said it and I meant it and I wasn't going to take it back. And so I could have never predicted what was going to happen from there, but I was devastated.
So she went through more of a decline and into rehab and then came out. And did that rehab stick, or has she gone a few rounds?
No, she ended up in a program that is a 2.5-year program.
Oh, wow.
So, and me not knowing anything about addiction, now I do. Most programs are only 30 days. I know that would not have been enough for her. So she ended up staying for 10 months at this program. She did residential, she did outpatient, and she did 6 months of aftercare. So she completed all of the program, but they allow the kids, it's a teen and young adult program, so they allow them to stay up to 2.5 years and then graduate. So technically she didn't graduate, but she was the only one too that her family didn't live locally. So she was on her own during that time, which is another kind of terrifying thing because she was 17 and 18 years old. But that 10 months was really life-changing. And she did relapse after that when she came home, but she didn't have to go back to treatment again. So, and she's over 6 years sober now. So
awesome. All right. Well, so what advice would you have for parents going through something like this? Or it is sometimes the other way. Sometimes older children are dealing with older parents who are now lonely, dealing with all sorts of difficulties around who am I now that I'm not, just let me get rid of that. Who am I now that I'm not who I've been my whole life, etc. There are a lot of people who go into retirement, for example. 1 in 3 have mental health issues when they quote unquote retire. And a lot of people don't realize that. And often they turn to drinking, sometimes drugs. Which can be a real big problem for, of course, their partner, et cetera. So anybody who's listening, who's dealing with people with mental health challenges, with addictions, because they often have a very similar impact and a similar path to recovery. What advice would you give them now, looking back? What would you say is the most important thing you learned from all of this about you and about taking care of or being with people with issues and addictions?
I think the biggest thing is that, I have to be, the only person that I can control is me. Mm-hmm. And so I have to be healthy so that I can hopefully impact the person who's unhealthy, right? 2 unhealthy people make a really big mess. Mm-hmm. And so it is really important to not try to control someone and to get yourself healthy, and a healthy detachment is really helpful. And I know that sounds difficult. It is difficult when you're talking about a parent-child relationship, but it's difficult with any relationship, but there has to be a healthy detachment. I can be okay if you're not okay, right? I can, and I will, and you really have to work at that. Yeah. And so, but another big thing is you can really have a big impact on someone if you're healthy. If you do not enable, I know that's a word that everybody, knows, and we have all kinds of definitions for it, but, we treat the person like they're capable human beings. We don't do everything for them. We don't cover up their messes. We don't do any of that. They make their messes. They only learn through consequences. And really, the biggest consequence consequences that spur learning are painful ones. So if it's not painful enough, they're not going to change. And so you kind of have to let them find that enough pain, whatever that is. I don't know. For everyone, it's different. And then they're going to want to change, and you're going to want to take their hand and go, yes, I know you can do this, and I'm going to cheer you on and be here for you and love you, but I can't do it for you. I'll never be able to do it for you.
Yeah. Well, and ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening and this is resonating with you at all, I hope you heard that line. It's okay for you to be okay, even if the person you love is not.
Right.
It's so important, so hard. If you've got a friend who's hurting, we tend to want to crawl down into the hole with them. We want to make it better. We want to fix it. We want to fix them. And really, that's our ego. That's our discomfort with pain. That's our discomfort. And for a lot of parents, there's a lot of ego as well, or partners. It's like I don't want to be the parent of an addict, or I don't want to. Then people will think I'm a bad mother, or they'll think I'm a bad wife, or a bad whatever, and we make it about us. And we need to get over our ego, which is very challenging because when we get scared, ego is really big. So right. I really, what was the support? What role did support play in your journey in terms of really consciously calling in support?
Oh gosh, for a while I didn't tell anyone. I was terrified to talk to anyone about it, and terrified of what that meant for me. Was I a horrible person? Was I terrible? Was I doing the wrong things? I mean,
whole ego thing that we were just talking about.
Yes, it was horrible. For months I didn't tell anyone, and I sent my daughter away, and I felt like nobody even noticed, and that was the weirdest thing. Like, nobody's asking, but I don't know that I want them to ask because I don't know what to say. So thankfully, the program that she ended up in had a really robust parent program, and it was integral for me to find support and other parents who had been through a similar journey and understood and didn't judge me and offered me, their experiences. And I just thought that they were the most wonderful people ever. And it drew me in. Yep. And I still work with parents every Wednesday night. I do Parents of Addicted Loved Ones meetings in my office. They're always free for any parent. And I can't imagine not doing that. It's to me, it was life-changing. It was life-saving. I don't know. I couldn't have gotten through it on my own. I don't know how parents do it without, I don't know anyone does it without support from people with lived experience. Yeah. These are people. They get it.
Yeah. I don't think many do get through it without calling in support. They tend to struggle and crash and burn. And so the topic, the title of the topic here is Discovering Purpose Through Pain. So so you mentioned that you do these parent groups now. You wrote a book about this to support people. So through this journey of pain and upset and so forth, your purpose is to now help others with this, I'm gathering, right?
Absolutely. And my business is that as well. So I work with a lot of people who are touched by addiction. And I mean, unfortunately, it's very common now. And I have a heart for both the person that's addicted and the family members. And so I love working with the population in recovery, or trying to be in recovery. And my business facilitates that. And I'll work with anyone. I mean, I just have a heart for people. But I do feel so grateful for everything that I was given when I was in it and didn't understand it and needed support. And I just can't help but give that back. So many people need it. And just like I needed it. And I feel like I have so much purpose in that.
Yeah. Well, and often people go into their business and become coaches or become therapists or become counselors, practitioners, healers, because they want what they didn't have when they went to hospital. And they want to be the source of what they wish they had for others. It's a lot of coaches that's how they come to their practice. And I think that is a great way to come to our purpose, is to be the solution that we wish we had. And so if you're thinking about a business, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to have gone through this process to want to be something like this, but it is a good way to think about what is a potential business that I want to do, or nonprofit, or, social enterprise, or whatever, charity, whatever you would like, that is the solution that you wish you had found earlier in your life, or that you wish you had had when you were dealing with something challenging. So just very quickly, I want to touch on the journey of writing a book, because you've taken all of this experience and turned it into a book, a couple of books. How was that for you? Was it harder than you thought it was going to be? Was it easier? How therapeutic was it? So again, for those who are listening, who have gone through something and have been thinking about, maybe I'll write a memoir, I'll write a, self-help book. What was that journey like?
It was awesome. I had the idea to write the book 5 years ago. My daughter and I had that idea at the same time, separately. And so, and like you just said, it's the book I wanted to read when I was in the midst of it. So it's from both perspectives, hers and mine. And so I started writing it 5 years ago. I just didn't know how to get it published. And so when I found Hope Books, and I mean, I really don't believe in coincidences. I got an email, it just sort of happened, and they had a program where they literally walk you through every step of writing and publishing with deadlines and things. And it was just, they made it so much easier than I probably wouldn't have ever finished it without that. So I'm grateful for that. And they will help you write your book and publish it within 12 months, but you can take longer if you want. So it's okay. There's no hard stop on that. But the process itself was fun, except for the writing part. I mean, I cried through most of it. Right. I still cry when I read the book. There's a lot of hard stuff in there, and I'm healed, and I don't feel like I have any leftover things really to process from that. But when I read about the story of it, it takes me back to those places, and I remember the emotion, and I don't know that ever goes away.
No, it doesn't. And so the impact of it, the charge for it changes, but the visceralness of it probably never goes away on big things. So one of the things, just a couple of little notes on that, folks. So what Janelle is talking about is having gone with a hybrid publisher. So someone who is not a mainstream publisher who publishes your book, but helps you get your book published. And that's actually, I recommend, if you're thinking of writing a book, the best way to go. Trying to do it all yourself is very difficult, because unless you've been a publisher in the past, you don't know all the things that you don't know. You don't know how to get your ISBN number. You don't know how to, get it launched in various ways, or how to get bestseller status and so on. But going to a mainstream publisher is not the solution that a lot of people think it is, and in fact can be quite disadvantaged, or quite a bit of disadvantage to it, because they won't help you promote it. They expect you to sell your book, etc., and they take a big chunk of it, and you are left with holding the bag if books get returned, etc. So it's often better to go with a hybrid publisher. One of the things I've been told my whole life, is I should write my life history, because I've had a very dramatic and traumatic and interesting life. And I cannot tell you how many times people have said that, but I have always stopped myself, because I've always thought, well, it's my story and it's interesting, but how can it be of advantage to anyone else? How can it help anyone else? Because they weren't there. That wasn't their experience. So how can it be of any use to them? But one person said to me at one point, "We'll write an instructional biography." And that switched everything in my head, because I thought, oh, actually just make meaning out of my stories. They don't have to live my story, but they can take the lesson or the learning or apply it to their stories. And that made it a whole lot more beneficial in my mind. So that is now something that I can let myself do, because it's different than just writing a book for ego. So the reason I'm telling you this, everybody, is because if you're thinking, I want to write my life story, I want to write about this experience that I had, or this particular struggle that I overcame, write it, if only for the therapeutic value. Write it so that you have a book for a legacy. And if only your family members read it, great. It will have been a contribution, but it may also ripple beyond that. And so if you've got a story to tell, whatever the BS excuses are, like mine were, tell them to take a hike, do the work, and write the book. So, Janelle, how long did it take you to finish the book?
I had written
your process.
Well, I had written about, I think it ended up being about 4 or 5 chapters.
Yeah.
5 years ago. So there's 11 chapters in the book.
Yeah.
So it took me, probably took me 45 days to finish it. And that includes interviewing my daughter, transcribing those interviews so that her point of view or her perspective was in each chapter. So that took a long time. And then, of course, reading it and all the things. So I did finish it on the deadline that I was given, which I loved. And then it went through all the editing process. So
yeah.
And
by all means, ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking of writing a book, for the love of God, if you do nothing else, hire a good editor and a good book cover designer. If you've got a book cover and bad editing, it doesn't matter how good the book is, it will never get out, it will never get seen, it will never get appreciated. And if you do decide to use AI, make sure you keep your heart and soul, trying to get rid of the cat, your heart and soul in the book, because there's a lot of AI books coming out right now, and they may be good books, but they're not books filled with heart and soul. So please make sure that you keep that in there with your stories and your reality and your lived experiences. So, Janelle, what's the difference that you hope the book will make, or that you have seen it already starting to make? It's just now, right?
Yeah, it's just coming out. It should ship this week, so it's available for pre-order. But the 2 main things that I hope that the book does is offer hope to parents who are feeling hopeless, and let them know that they're not alone, that there are many of us who have experienced and walked this journey, and there are those of us out there that are willing to walk right alongside them and help them get through whatever may be ahead of them, and then find peace too, and that they have purpose in their own life, and regardless of what happens with their loved one or their child. And so I think those are all important things. And our story, I think, is the epitome of all of that. As ugly as it is, it turns out pretty good in the end. Yeah.
Which is often the case, like in life, and not always. Sometimes ugly just stays ugly, but it is
perfect.
It is really wonderful to share that hope. I think that's really important. Like you said, it's the book you wish you had when you were in the situation, so that you knew there was some light at the end of the tunnel. So you maybe knew some practical steps to take, so that you knew you weren't alone and you didn't have to hide in this pain and shame and all of the rest of it. So again, I hope you hear this as encouragement for whatever difficulties you're going through right now, to number one, call in support. Get a community who gets it, who's been there, who's done it, who understands the journey and understands you are not that issue. You are more than just what happens to you. You are more than the people in your life, your children, your loved ones, your partners, whatever. Kat really wants to be on the podcast.
Thank you.
You are more than what's going on in your life, and get support. If you don't, it's so much harder and so much longer that you'll sit in the shit. So don't do that. And if you do have a story that you, as a result of the many things you've gone through, give yourself permission to tell that story, and you don't know who it's going to help. Speaking of which, you've got an opportunity for people to grab part of the book and take a look at it. So tell them about that.
Yes, I have a preview of the book. It's about the first 90 pages, so it'll get you about a third of the way through, and hopefully you'll want to read the rest.
All right. And so we'll put a URL into the show notes for the vault. So just letting you know, folks, that we have the new process. Rather than putting the show notes for just that guest in the URL for the gift in the show notes for just that guest, we put one for the vault. And the vault is our booklet that's up 24/7, 365 days a year. It has the information about all of our guests and their podcasts and all of their gifts. So you can go in there and grab Janelle's book preview, and while you're in there, grab some other things that are going to help you with your business, your life, whatever it is, for free, and get them all at once. You do have to opt into each person's thing, and yes, you'll probably get emails from them, but that's okay, because you might actually need their support, their love, and their help with whatever it is that you're dealing with. So please go and look at the vault and grab Janelle's preview of the book. Do you have it handy? Hold it up so they can see it as well. There we go. There you go. So finding her or losing her, finding us, a mother's fight, a daughter's journey, and the road to recovery. So with a beautiful butterfly, of course. I hope that this has been inspiring for you and helpful for you, and reminds you to reach out, get professional help, get friends and family's help, and remember that you are not your situation. You are not the result, the reflection of other people. You are you, and you are doing the best you can right now. So keep going and get through to the purpose on the other side of this pain. And if you would like support in terms of clarifying what that purpose is, please reach out and book a why session with me. We'll put the information in the show notes so that you can find out what your purpose is now, and your why, and how to really turn that into something that you can live into, either through a business or through something that you do, just as Janelle has done. And you can see her passion now that she's doing this work and has come through to the other side of the pain to find that purpose, live into it, and practical ways. Her hands-on work in her clinic, her work with parents in their group, and her book. There's so many ways that you can reach out and touch people and help them as a result of what you've gone through. You are the wisdom workforce, and the world needs your voice, your message, and your experience. So thank you, Janelle, for being here and sharing your story and your journey. And for those people who are out there right now listening and thinking about perhaps turning their story into their business or incorporating that, what would you say to them? What advice do you have for people who have gone through the tough stuff and are working to figure out how to incorporate that in what they're doing now?
Do it. Don't let fear stop you, because fear is what keeps us from really living out our life's purpose. So I am a big proponent of faith over fear. Do it. The worst that can happen is that it doesn't work out quite the way you wanted it to, but I bet there's something even better right around the corner. So you'll never know if you don't just do it.
Yes.
Whatever it is, try something.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
We'll just try something else if it doesn't work out. I've evolved over time. I think we all do. So just dive in and do it. You can't go wrong if you love something and you make it work.
Yep. Yeah. There's a line in the Jason Mraz song that I love that says, "I'll either win some or learn some."
Yeah.
So beautiful. Thank you. So you heard her. Just go do it, y'all. All right. Tune in. Please subscribe to the podcast, share it, and come back for more great information on the inner and outer game of business, how to win at life, and now that you are reinventing yourself and refiring instead of retiring. Thanks for being here, everybody. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.